Turning now to the memorial service for the greatest, Muhammad Ali.
نحن أولياؤكم في الحياة الدنيا وفي
Today, mourners gathered at an interfaith prayer service. Ali died last week at the age of 74. He was a devout Muslim, and prayers were recited from the Quran. 16,000 free tickets to the event were handed out yesterday in less than an hour.
Our David Begnaud was outside the Freedom Hall where the service took place. David, can you tell us who was in attendance today?
We'll get to who was in attendance a little bit later. Let me tell you what's happening right now. It's called a janazah, and the people behind me are filing out of the Freedom Hall in pretty large numbers. The event has concluded, as Vlad was saying. 16,000 tickets were provided free of charge. You didn't have to pay. It was first come, first serve. The event today was held with, of course, the family of Muhammad Ali present. Many celebrities, some dignitaries, and mainly a lot of people who never met him, but wanted to be here because he was a hero to so many. He was an inspiration within the Muslim community, probably one of the most famous, beloved Muslims in America for many people who live abroad. I want to bring in one of my CBS News colleagues, Anam Sadiq. She's a digital journalist and associate producer with us based in New York. Anam, you were inside the service. Tell me exactly what a janazah is and how it went.
So janazah is a very short Muslim prayer that's usually prayed after somebody passes away. The body is brought in and placed in front of the congregation, and the imam leads these short prayers. The congregants usually stand and they follow the imam, and it consists of reciting several prayers, in between which there's a takbir, which is the placing hands up to the ears and saying Allahu Akbar, which is God is great. In between, you're making prayers for the deceased, making prayers for the Muslim community, making prayers for yourselves.
Tell us, when the casket came in, what was it draped with?
It was draped with a cloth with various Quranic verses on it. I didn't get a chance to read what it said, but generally when there is a casket before the body is eventually placed in the grave, which usually is done without a casket, they'll have it draped with some verses from the Quran or the Declaration of Faith.
Is it unusual for us to be allowed access inside like we were today? Not only for the general public to be there, but also for cameras to be allowed?
Well, usually for a janazah prayers, it usually takes place after the regular prayers at the mosque. So they're usually, happening with just the Muslim community. After they finish praying one of the 5 prayers, they'll then, together do the janazah prayer. So obviously this was unusual because it wasn't done after a prayer, and it was done in such a big venue with so many people of various faiths.
Exceptions have been made, because normally when someone of the Muslim faith passes away, how quickly are they buried?
They are usually buried right away, as soon as possible is what's recommended. But of course, there's been an exception made, because it's been a week since he passed, and I think it's probably because he's a prominent figure and they wanted him to be buried in his birthplace.
We thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Back to Rena's question that she initially asked, who was here? We saw various celebrities, everyone from Jesse Jackson to Sugar Ray Leonard to Lennox Lewis and Don King. I'll tell you a little story. I flew from Miami to Louisville yesterday, and I was standing in line getting ready to get on the plane, and I heard someone singing behind me, and I eventually turned around, and it was Don King. He was waving flags. He had a whole bunch of flags under his arm, and I introduced myself, and I said I was from CBS, and CBS, and he was everything that you've seen on television, and that big personality. That's who he was, and he said to me, he shouldn't be dead, he shouldn't be dead. He had more fighting to do. So there are so many stories, Vlad and Rena, that I have heard, and what you run into is you run into people of different generations. You have those who were alive in the 60s who knew what he meant then, but then you have a 20-year-old who's here today who, to them, he's a household name, but they don't know a whole lot about him. This Freedom Hall was where Muhammad Ali fought his very first professional fight, and you know who it was against? A police chief in West Virginia who moonlighted as a boxer. And he fought his very last professional fight here in Louisville as well.
Fascinating insights. Although if you want some more insight into the relationship between Don King and Muhammad Ali, take a look at the end of the Rumble in the Jungle, the fight between Ali and Foreman in 1974. At the very end, after Muhammad Ali wins that fight and Don King comes over to embrace Ali, Ali gives him a look on his face. It's a very telling moment about the relationship they had over those years. David Begnaud in Louisville, thank you so much. And also thank Anam Sadiq for that insight into what happened inside that prayer. Thank you very much, David.
I will. You bet.